Hey, welcome back guys, and today we're going to be revisiting the Wyvern tank tier list and ranking the units you can use in the frontline or the tank slot for Wyvern, and also be comparing them in terms of strength. I decided to release this beginner tier list because it's almost been 2 years since I updated this, and there have been a lot of changes and even some units released that really changed the landscape of the tank tier list, and also because I do plan to just re-release an updated 2023-2024 Wyvern guide in the near future because of so many changes to the Wyvern meta. Now we'll be separating these units into 5 tiers: the S tier, the A tier, the B tier, the C tier, and the D tier. And for the most part, you guys are going to want to use mostly the S tier units because they are all free to play except one of them, but A tier units can be very good as well. Now kicking off the S tier guys, at the number 1 best tank in the game for Wyvern, we have Angelica. Now Angelica is completely free to play, you can get her from connections, and the reason why I have her at number 1 is because she makes the barrier to entry to Wyvern super low. She is super tanky for a 4-star unit, she's very easy to build, and she is the easiest tank to actually get started with in Wyvern, and after that it's really up to you if you want to switch her out, but for beginners, she is going to be the best option for sure. And even if you're in the late game using Angelica, there's no crime to that. She is extremely good for Wyvern, and you can just put her in your tank slot with very bad gear, and she'll be able to survive very easily. Next, we have Angelic Montmorency. So a lot of people argue between Angelica and Angelic Montmorency who to use. Angelic Montmorency is a lot better in other areas of content, but the thing is she's a little bit harder to gear than Angelica because she's a 3-star unit. Also, you will have to do her specialty change quest and also invest a lot of runes into her to actually max out her skill tree so she becomes good for Wyvern. And also just keep in mind, like, you will need better gear for her than Angelica will need. Because of her lower base stats, she will require just higher stats. And also keep in mind, she doesn't have an exclusive equipment like Angelica does, so she'll be missing out on even more stats. If you can actually make Angelic Montmorency work, I will actually recommend her over Angelica. But if you're a new player to the game and it's your first account, it's actually not worth taking the risk and investing everything into your Angelic Montmorency, praying that she's tanky enough, then just not using the safe option Angelica. Because Angelica you can use in the early game for pretty much a lot of areas of content, and even in PvP on defense teams in the early game, she is extremely strong, especially if you can make her tanky enough to stall out games. The next unit is a non-free-to-play unit, and you guys might be surprised because it's a non-ice unit, meaning that if this tank takes his turn, he will actually combat readiness push the boss. But this unit is General Purges. Now a lot of people think that he's not good anymore because we have a unit named Mui that is out, who actually can CR push your team if your entire team is ice when your front line gets hit. But the thing is, Mui's damage is pretty bad compared to other units. He's only really there for his passive, and also because he has that decreased attack buff, which is very helpful. But General Purges, if you actually run him with a full DPS squad and he's tanky enough to actually survive, he will make your runs the fastest. He will make your runs about 1 minute 40 seconds is what I was timing in at when I used to run him a long time ago. And he's the best option to have, especially in your team as a tank, if you are running a fast team and you do not have the gear good enough for a one-shot team yet. I think if you are making your Wyvern team, or you have your Wyvern team and you're realizing, oh, you want to speed up your team, then actually instead of going for that full one-shot team, which can cost you a lot of resources, or you might not even have the gear for it yet, or the units even, then just try your General Purges team. He can make your runs very fast, and he might even save you a lot of time in the long run if you switch him out for your tank. Now for the A tier units, these units are very good just because these units have an attack buff. So we're going to see Diane and Rose, they both have an attack buff in their S3, making it so that your team will just do more damage overall. Just keep in mind, attack buffs aren't as powerful in Wyvern because most of your damage is coming from critical hit damage, which will scale with your Daydream Jokers, so keep that in mind. But these units will still speed up your runs and they're pretty tanky. Rose also has a defense buff and a CR push for her team, and Diana is just a Soul Weaver that can spam a lot of barriers, and if you have Rod of Amaryllis, she becomes very tanky as well, and is perfectly fine to use in Wyvern. But for the most part, the S tier units will be a lot more consistent, but the A tier units, if you don't have General Purges yet, are a good option if you also want to speed up your runs, but you still just haven't pulled that General Purges yet because these units, Diane and Rose, also have that attack buff, which will in theory and in practice actually speed up your runs a little bit. Now for the B tier units guys, we have Crozet, the Ice Knight starting off. This unit isn't too powerful, but isn't too bad either. He's very tanky, he also has decreased attack. The only thing is, you don't really need another decreased attack because Mui has one built into his kit. But if for some reason you're not using Mui and instead you're using a more high damage team such as like Alexa, Sigrid with Furious, then Crozet can be a good option if you're lacking on debuffs. Very tanky and very solid as well. Just keep in mind he doesn't have healing, so you do need to kill the boss pretty quickly or he will end up dying. Now we have Tamarin, guys, another non-ice unit, the only other one other than General Purchase on this list. And she's here just because she's Tamarin. She's super broken in PvE. Even though she'll be CR pushing the boss, she's still very good because of that attack buff. And also because she just has a lot of support for your team. The only thing is her CR push isn't as valuable here because you can be running Mew instead with like an ice tank, and you'll be getting that same value, even more value out of CR pushing if you just didn't run Tamarin instead and ran a ice tank instead. So for that reason, she's in the B tier, but you know, still a decent unit. Still going to be good in Wyvern, just might not be the best choice for you. After that, guys, we have another Ice Knight, Tywin. So this unit also doesn't have healing, but he is very, very good. He has a attack buff for your team with a CR push. He has a defense break, and because he is a base 5-star unit, he's pretty tanky. The only thing is, there's not really a reason to use him because there's not really a reason to get him. Now, he's available from the selective summon, but not really the best choice there because he's only going to ever be used in Wyvern and in like early game PvP cleaving. After that, you're not going to really use him anywhere. He really needs a rework or a buff in my opinion. For that reason, there's not really a reason to even pull for him, which means you won't even have him to use, if that makes sense. If you do decide to use him though, it is a perfectly good option because a lot of people in the past have used him before. Just keep in mind, like, I would not recommend him. Now for the C tier units, guys, you're pretty much going to want to stay away from these units overall because they're not that good, but we'll talk about them very briefly. So Basque, he's pretty much a worse version of Crozet with that decreased attack buff. He's also squishier and he's a 3-star, meaning his base stats are a little lower, so never really a reason to use him. Crow, he is just a meat shield. He has a defense buff, which doesn't really matter on him because Wyvern will strip him unless you run him on 200% effect resist, which at that point, if you have the gear to run a tank on 200% effect resist, you probably have the gear to run any other tank, which is going to be better, like Rose even. So not really a reason to run him. And his S3, I guess, has that barrier, which is okay, but his S1 has a provoke, which does not work on the boss, which makes him pretty useless. Helen, guys, she's pretty tanky, honestly, for a 3-star, one of the tankiest 3-stars in the game because of her S2, but not really worth running unless you're running a 3-star only free-to-play challenge like I did before. Next, we have Amelia, guys. Although she's a very good soul weaver, especially for PvP, you're going to realize in PvE, especially on auto, her AI for S2 is super bad. She's going to CR push like random units and give attack buffs to units you don't want. For example, she might attack buff your Furious instead of your Sigurd, who has like, you know, 5 debuffs lined up on Wyvern, which would be very bad and a lot of wasted damage. So not really worth using, and her healing is pretty pitiful as well. So in my opinion, not really that great. And now for the D tier units, guys, Terrana, Royal Guard, Aether, Elena. I only have these on this tier list because some people out there are going to wonder if these units are viable in the Wyvern's tank slot because they're new to the game, and let me tell you, they are absolutely terrible. The best one is going to be Terrano Royal Guard because he has like reflection damage, but even that is not nearly good enough to actually put him up in the C tier, so please stay away from these 3 units, guys. They're not worth using, and you're way better off using those free-to-play Angelica and Angelic Montmorency units because 1, they're free-to-play, and 2, they're just a lot better. Yeah, that's pretty much it for this Wyvern tank tier list though, guys. Like, if you just want a really good summary, just use Angelica or Angelic Montmorency in the early game, preferably Angelica unless you have really good gear or you know what you're doing. And then once you get to the point where you want to speed up your runs and you can switch out your Mew for like an Alexa or something, then you can switch your tank to like a General Purchase to speed up your runs a little bit, or even Diane or Rose. If you guys don't have General Purchase yet, you can switch out, you know, your tank, your Angelica or Angelic Montmorency for Diane or Rose, and then after that you can move to your one-shot team. That being said, I hope this video helped you guys out, guys, and we'll be updating more tier lists in the future, so keep your eyes out for that. We'll be talking about the damage dealing role, the debuffing role, defense breaking role, and we'll also be updating the general Wyvern guide as well because there have been a lot of changes to Wyvern, as you guys can tell if you compare this with my last tier list. That being said, hope you guys have a great week, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace.